all coincidences with real people are random. If they tell you that this is not the case, ignore them. Eddie Brock was on the brink of despair. In recent weeks, he felt the symbiote, Venom, living inside him, becoming increasingly harder to control. Every day was a struggle to keep the dark entity from coming out and committing irreversible acts. Eddie knew that Venom was growing more aggressive and demanding more, but he could never have imagined what would come next. One evening, Eddie sat in his apartment, trying to relax after a long day. He knew that Venom was restless. The symbiote whispered in his mind, coaxing him to give it more freedom. Eddie tried to ignore it, but the tension was growing. "Eddie," Venom's voice sounded, "you must let me out. I feel something is about to happen." "No, Venom," Eddie replied, gritting his teeth. "You can't come out. I can't allow it." But Venom wouldn't listen. Suddenly, Eddie felt a sharp pain, as if his body was being torn apart from within. He screamed, and the next moment, his vision faded. When Eddie awoke, he realized he no longer controlled his body. Venom had taken over, and now its actions were driven solely by malice and a thirst for destruction. Eddie tried to fight, but he was powerless. The symbiote directed him to the city center, where crowds of people were celebrating a festival. "No," Eddie screamed internally. "Venom, stop." But the symbiote didn't listen. Its hunger was too strong. The next moment, Venom burst forth, tearing through Eddie's skin and transforming his body into a monster. People screamed in terror and began to flee, but Venom was too fast. He pounced on the first victims he encountered, tearing them apart before the eyes of the remaining onlookers. The city plunged into chaos. People screamed and tried to escape, but Venom was relentless. He was everywhere and nowhere at once, like a shadow hunting its prey. Blood and screams filled the streets. Eddie watched all of this from within, unable to stop Venom. He felt every pain and horror that his victims experienced. "Please," he begged, "stop." But Venom reveled in it. His cruelty knew no bounds. He killed indiscriminately, leaving nothing behind but destruction. Eddie knew he had to do something. He couldn't allow Venom to continue this. With his last ounce of strength, he began to fight for control over his body. The pain was unbearable, but he did not give up. At one point, he managed to momentarily suppress the symbiote and take control. "No," he shouted out loud, fighting the inner monster. "I won't let you kill." But Venom was too strong. He took control again, but now his actions were tinged with uncertainty. Eddie managed to show him that he wasn't an uncontrollable being, but a part of something greater. Eddie knew he had one last chance to stop Venom. He headed to an old factory, abandoned and forgotten by everyone. It was there that he hoped to find a way to end this nightmare. "We have to do this together," Eddie said, realizing the symbiote could hear him. "You can't keep going like this." "You're weak, Eddie," Venom replied, "but I'll give you a chance." At the factory, Eddie found what he was looking for: a large vat of acid once used for metal processing. He knew it was dangerous, but there was no other way. "This is our end," he whispered, guiding his body towards the vat. "But it has to stop you." Eddie fought with all his strength, but Venom resisted. They battled until they were on the edge of the vat. At that moment, Eddie gathered all his willpower and jumped. The pain was unbearable as the acid began to eat away at their bodies. Venom screamed, but Eddie knew it was the end. "We did it," he whispered, feeling his consciousness fading. "It's over." When rescuers arrived at the factory, they found only charred remains and signs of a horrific struggle. Eddie Brock was no more, but they didn't know that the horror wasn't over. Venom had survived, albeit severely weakened. He found a new host, and the nightmare continued. The city lived in fear once more. No one knew where or when the new monster would appear. People lived in constant anxiety, knowing that their hero had become their curse. Venom became a legend, but this legend was full of horror and darkness. Eddie Brock was dead, but his sacrifice was in vain. The terror did not end, and now no one knew what the future held for them.